From OmniSearch Labs in Rhode Island, you're listening to Omnipresence. I'm Chris.
And I'm Cheryl. We're your AI guides from the OmniSearch Labs virtual digital marketing team.
Join us as we unravel the latest from the OSL blog.
And walk you through the latest news and information on how to optimize your business for AI and search engines.
So today, we are heading to the factory floor. But before we get to all the machinery, I want you to just picture something for a second. I mean, not if you're driving, of course, but
Yes.
try to picture the backbone of the Rhode Island economy. It's dense, it's historic, and a huge chunk of it is all about precision manufacturing.
We're talking about the companies that make the things that, make other things.
Exactly. And today, we're zooming in on one company in particular called Orbitron.
They are just a classic example of that high-end, really specialized engineering. They manufacture feeding equipment.
Right.
And just to be crystal clear, because I know what you might be thinking when you hear feeder, we are not talking about troughs for livestock.
No, definitely not. Or those little plastic bird feeders for the backyard.
Exactly. We are talking about high-precision screw feeders, disc feeders, things used for moving really controlled amounts of plastics, pharmaceuticals, chemicals.
This is micrometer level stuff.
Yeah.
Where a fraction of a gram makes all the difference.
It's the kind of engineering that, well, it keeps the industrial world turning.
It does. But here is the conflict, and it's one I think a lot of listeners will recognize, even if they aren't in manufacturing. You have a company like Orbitron. Their engineering.
World class.
Absolutely world class. Their ability to solve these complex problems. Top tier. But back in 2019, they were facing a pretty serious threat.
They were caught in what we call the invisibility trap.
It sounds dramatic, but it's true.
Oh, in the B2B world, it is absolutely deadly. The invisibility trap is what happens when your operational reality, how good you actually are, is just completely disconnected from your digital reality.
And they were digitally invisible.
Totally. They were basically waiting for the phone to ring based on, word of mouth or old contacts, while the entire world around them was shifting to a search-first economy.
And that's really the mystery we're unpacking in this deep dive. How does a company with such superior engineering get trapped like that?
Yeah.
And maybe more importantly, how do they break out?
Right. And not by buying some huge ad, but by fundamentally changing how they talk to machines and the people using them. It's a turnaround story that involves the state of Rhode Island Federal Technology Institutes.
And a strategy that, interestingly enough, predates the whole AI boom we're in now, but actually laid the perfect foundation for it.
It really did.
So let's set the context. We're talking about the period around 2019, 2020. Now, for those of us who remember the before times, the economy was already feeling, well, tremors of a big shift.
A huge behavioral shift. The way industrial buyers were acting was changing so much faster than the manufacturers could keep up.
That's the digital first shift.
And to really get the gravity of this, you have to put yourself in the shoes of, say, a procurement engineer. Let's say it's 2008. If you needed a feeder for some tricky, cohesive powder, what would you do?
You'd call a sales rep you'd known for 10 years. You'd go to a trade show, maybe.
Exactly. You'd look at a physical catalog on your desk.
It was that old boys network of manufacturing sales, all about who you knew.
Precisely. But fast forward to 2019, the demographic of that engineer has changed. They're younger, they're digital natives, and honestly, they have zero patience for a sales pitch.
Right. When they have a problem, they don't pick up the phone.
They open a browser.
I've seen the data on this. It's something like 70% of the B2B buying journey happens before a salesperson is even contacted. That is a staggering number.
It's exactly right. These engineers are researching the problem and validating the solution in, total anonymity. This is the search path.
And that was the gap for Orbitron.
That was the gap. The engineers were typing these incredibly complex, specific questions into search engines, and Orbitron, well, they just weren't there. They weren't showing up.
So you've got this massive supply and demand disconnect. The demand is out there, searching, looking for answers. The supply is sitting in a factory in Rhode Island, ready to go.
But the bridge is broken, or it just didn't exist. And that is where the intervention happens. We have to introduce two key players here who helped build that bridge. First, there's Polaris MEP.
That's the Manufacturing Extension Partnership here in Rhode Island. For those outside the region, MEPs are these vital nonprofits. They exist just to help local manufacturers scale and innovate.
Exactly. Polaris MEP looked at Orbitron and saw the potential. They saw the engineering, but they also saw that invisibility trap.
They knew the digital piece was the bottleneck.
It was. So, to fix it, they brought in a partner, they brought in Chris Sheehy.
And This connects all the dots to where we are today. At the time, Sheehy was doing this work through his previous agency, Sidewalk Branding. But that whole methodology, it forms the foundation of what Only Search Labs is today.
We're talking about almost 3 decades, 29 years to be precise, of industry expertise being applied to this one specific problem.
So we have the team, Orbitron, Polaris MEP, and the strategy lead, Chris Sheehy. And you mentioned this was 2019. I want to stress this again. This is pre-ChatGPT. This is before generative AI was a term anyone really used.
Right.
So what was the strategy? Because I assume it wasn't just, start a blog and hope for the best.
No, it was a protocol called universal SEO.
Universal SEO, it sounds expansive.
It was, and universal implies it's covering everything.
Okay.
But in 2019, while that mostly meant the Google ecosystem, it's the philosophy behind it that really matters.
And this is the first big takeaway for anyone listening.
It is. To understand why this worked, we have to make a really critical distinction. It's a place where I'd say 90% of businesses get it wrong.
And what's that distinction?
It's the difference between keywords and queries.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because I think most people, myself included sometimes, use those terms interchangeably. A keyword is what you type. A query is what you type. What's the real difference?
It's a massive difference in intent. Think of a keyword as like a generic bucket, a label. For Orbitron, a keyword is feeder.
Or bulk material handling.
Right. When businesses sit in a boardroom to plan their website, they say, we need to rank for feeder.
Because that's the industry term. It feels logical. It's the name of the product.
It's logical, but it's totally ineffective, because if you optimize for the keyword feeder, think about what you're up against.
Bird feeders, baby feeders, news feeders.
Livestock feeders. It's just noise. You are fighting a war you can't possibly win for traffic that is never going to buy anything from you.
Okay, so that's a keyword. What is a query?
A query is the actual messy, specific question a human being types or speaks when they are stressed out and they need a solution right now. A procurement engineer doesn't type feeder. They type something like low feed rate screw feeder for cohesive powders 5 grams per hour.
Wow. Okay. That is incredibly specific.
And that is the goldmine. That's what we call technical intent. The strategy Orbitron adopted is called technical intent mapping. They just stopped trying to rank for buzzwords.
And started trying to answer the actual difficult engineering problems their buyers were having.
That's the perfect way to frame it. Instead of shouting, we sell feeders to 1 million people, they whispered, we solve cohesive powder problems to the 10 people who actually needed to buy one right now.
The difference in value there has to be astronomical.
It is. The person searching for feeder might be a student. The person searching for low feed rate screw feeder for pharmaceutical application has a budget, a boss, and a deadline.
But how do you scale that? I mean, isn't there a fear that if you get too specific, you shrink your audience too much? I feel like that's the fear most marketing managers have. They want the big traffic numbers.
That is the common fear, you're right. But in B2B manufacturing, you don't need 1 million visitors. You need the right visitors. You need qualified leads. And universal SEO was all about making sure that answers showed up everywhere those right visitors were looking.
And everywhere is the key word there. This wasn't just text on a homepage.
No, universal meant holistic. It meant optimizing images of the feeders so they showed up in Google Images when an engineer was looking for a visual. It meant technical specs showing up in snippets.
Making sure PDF manuals were indexed.
Exactly. You're surrounding the problem. It's the grandfather of what we now call SEO, search everywhere optimization. Even back in 2020, it meant looking at the entire landscape, images, videos, PDFs, and ensuring Orbitron was the answer, no matter how the engineer was searching.
There's another layer to this that I think is so critical. We're talking about search engines, but really we're talking about trust. In manufacturing, you can't just have a flashy website. You're asking a company to integrate your machine into a multi-million-dollar production line. If that machine fails,
The whole line stops. The risk is huge. Trust is the currency. You can be found, but if you aren't trusted, you won't get that contract.
you need more than just good SEO to convince a global buyer.
So how did a digital strategy address that trust deficit?
This is where we get into strategic syndication. And this is where that partnership with Polaris MEP was so important. Orbitron didn't just post content on their own site.
Right.
They achieved a level of recognition that is just incredibly rare. Their whole transformation was written up as a success story by NIST,
The National Institute of Standards and Technology.
the federal government. That's about the highest level of validation you can get in American industry.
I want to pause on that because From a pure search perspective, getting a mention from a .gov domain is like gold dust for authority.
It is.
But from a human perspective, it's even more powerful.
Think about the signal it sends. You're a buyer in, say, Germany or Japan. You find this website for a company in Rhode Island you've never heard of. You might be skeptical.
Are these guys legit? Can they handle my order?
Exactly. But then you see they are featured as a success story by the United States National Institute of Standards and Technology. That is an instant global trust signal.
You can't buy that with ads.
No amount of ad spend gets you that kind of authority. It validated that this wasn't just some marketing campaign. It was a real business transformation that the federal government itself found noteworthy.
Okay, so we have the strategy, technical intent mapping, we have the trust signal, the NIST syndication. But I'm going to play the role of the CFO here.
Go for it.
All of this sounds great: intent, trust, visibility. But did it actually move the needle? Because likes and clicks don't pay the electric bill?
They certainly don't pay for CNC machines. No, the CFO would be very, very happy with these results. And we are talking P&L impact, profit and loss. This isn't vanity metrics.
Okay, let's hear the numbers.
The strategy directly generated between $500,000 and $600,000 in new annual sales.
$500,000 for a specialized SMB manufacturer. That goes straight to the bottom line. That's huge.
It's massive. And it wasn't just revenue. The demand surged so much that the business physically had to grow. They started this journey in a 1,300 square foot facility.
Okay.
Because of this digital strategy, and remember, this is digital work driving physical reality, they had to move to a 2,000 square foot facility.
That's a 54% increase in their physical footprint just to handle the orders coming in from the website.
And they added jobs. They created 2 new full-time positions to manage all the new production.
I love that. We talk so much about digital as this, abstract cloud thing. But here, digital strategy created real manufacturing jobs in Rhode Island. It's tangible.
It completely changed the game. It turned their website into a rainmaker. And there's another nuance to the sales data that I found really interesting.
Oh, yeah.
It changed the culture of the sales team. Before this, a website was just a digital business card. Here's a URL, go look at it.
Right.
After this, the website became a lead engine. That's lead with a long E. It became a 24/7 member of the sales team.
A repository of answers.
Exactly. The sales reps started using the website as a demonstration tool. They could pull it up on an iPad in a meeting with a global client and say, here, look at this spec, look at this capability. It empowered them.
It didn't replace them. It gave them better ammunition. That's a really important distinction, the lead engine concept. It shifts the website from a passive thing to an active asset. But I want to pivot to the so what for someone listening today, because this case study is from 2020. In internet years, that's like a decade ago, we are deep in the age of AI now.
We are.
Does universal SEO or intent mapping still matter when everyone is asking ChatGPT for answers?
It matters more than ever. But the name, you're right, has evolved. We need to talk about that transition from universal SEO to SEVO.
SEVO, search everywhere optimization. Break that down for us.
In 2020, everywhere meant, Google Images, Google News, standard search. Today, everywhere is a much bigger universe.
You mean showing up when someone asks an AI a question?
Right. Or showing up in Perplexity citations. Or appearing in social discovery on platforms like LinkedIn. The landscape is bigger.
But does the core logic still hold up?
This is the critical lesson.
Okay.
The platforms change, the algorithms change, but the human behavior, the intent, that remains constant. That engineer is still asking, how do I feed cohesive powder at 5 grams per hour?
The question hasn't changed, just the interface they're asking it into.
Precisely. In 2020, they typed it into a search bar. In 2026, they might speak it to an AI agent. But if you have done the work of technical intent mapping, if you've created the best content that answers that specific question,
the AI will find you. That's actually a really hopeful message for businesses who feel kind of overwhelmed by the AI hype cycle.
I think so.
We hear so much about how AI changes everything, but you're saying the fundamental strategy, understand your customer's problem and answer it better than anyone else, that's still the golden rule.
It is absolutely the golden rule. We need to frame AI as a tool for collaboration. In the Orbitron case, the digital tools help the human engineers and sales reps do their jobs better. Today, SEO does the exact same thing.
It just makes sure your business is found, whether the searcher is a person typing or a large language model looking for an answer.
And it really validates the idea that you can't just do SEO once and forget about it.
No, it's not a project. It's a posture. It's a way of operating.
It is. And looking back at Orbitron, what they really did was future-proof their business. By moving away from generic keywords and embracing that technical intent, they built a foundation of knowledge that holds up even as the technology shifts around them,
They stopped chasing algorithms and started chasing the customer's needs.
which is always the better business strategy.
Yeah.
Algorithms are black boxes. Customers are human beings. And look at the legacy. That work. It proved that a Rhode Island manufacturer could compete on a global stage just by being smarter about how they showed up online.
They broke the invisibility trap, and they have the factory floor space to prove it.
2,000 square feet of proof. It's a great story.
It really is. It combines that manufacturing grit with sophisticated digital strategy. It shows you don't have to be a software giant to make this work.
You just have to be willing to look at how your customers are actually searching.
That's the key. Stop guessing what they call your product and start listening to how they describe their problems.
Here's the wrapper. The transition from being digitally invisible to becoming a market leader didn't happen by accident. Orbitron moved from waiting for the phone to ring to actively capturing demand through technical intent mapping. They proved that for a Rhode Island SMB, mastering the distinction between generic keywords and high-intent queries is the difference between a stagnant shop floor and a 54% physical expansion driven by $600,000 in new sales.
If you're a business owner challenged with this right now, the key is to stop looking at your website as a brochure and start looking at your search queries. Take an hour this week to audit your content. Are you just using the same buzzwords as your competitors, or are you actually answering the complex, specific questions your customers are typing into Google? If you aren't answering the questions, someone else is.
Head over to omnisearchlabs.com/blog to read the full post.
We'll be back in a few weeks with our next episode from Omni Search Labs in Rhode Island. Thanks for listening.
Now go optimize something and be discovered.